All right, welcome everybody to the Rob Duran Sports Beyond the Diamond podcast. Pleased to announce that I have my first guest ever on my podcast show. Good friend of mine, former MLB pitcher, World Series champion, Miguel Batista. Miguel, thank you for joining me today. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and actually honored to be the first. I mean, how many people can say I was the first one?
That's right.
Imagine if I would have been the first one on Larry King show. That would make me a legend.
Well, hopefully we'll look back on this in 10, 15, 20 years and you'll be the first and the legend of this show.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Man, it's funny because we've known each other for a bit. We met a long time ago. I think I was a junior in high school when I first met you through some family, my brother-in-law and my sister. And I remember you came to my high school, and it was funny because that day you came and you had a presentation and all that stuff. And I remember very specifically my brother-in-law calling me up after you had finished giving your presentation so that we could take a quick picture. You gave me an autograph and all that stuff. And I remember walking back and everyone's looking at me like, why the heck did you get to go up first? So it was funny because that kind of, I had just gotten to that school and all that stuff. So having that experience was kind of cool. It was like, yeah, I'm cool with the baseball player. What's up? So it was good, man. And of course, through you, I actually have a picture that with Ken Griffey Jr., who was a guy that I definitely idolized and saw growing up for a long time. So I definitely have to thank you for that because that was a priceless moment, and I really appreciate that.
Well, Griffey's a great guy. I mean, people that never had the opportunity to hang around the guy, not just to play, but the guy, missed out. They don't know how he's really funny. He's a guy that he can crack a joke on anybody. He can take a joke from anybody. It's a hard guy to find with that much talent and that easy personality. Because guys that are that good, they're very sensitive. You can't be joking around them very very much. But he was a really good guy. I mean, I was surprised. He was one of the guys that I had to walk to him and ask him one day, get me out of this, because I played many teams. I met a lot of superstars. I have played with a lot of guys that are going to the Hall of Fame. You're the nicest I ever seen. That doesn't match up. He's like, hey, dude, this is how I am. I mean, I grew up here in the big leagues. My dad was a big leaguer. I grew up in the clubhouse, and this is who I am. And I asked around some other people that played with him before. He goes, yeah, that's Griffey. He's just a kid. He's still a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome because we definitely see that as fans on TV or in commercials or whatever. So it's awesome to know that some of our heroes are actually exactly who they are and who they portray. So that's awesome to hear that kind of stuff. That's great. So what have you been up to since leaving the game?
Ooh, too much. I just finished law school.
Oh, nice.
3 weeks ago, I just graduated from law school. And as a matter of fact, today I went back to apply for my PhD on criminal law. So I'm going to keep going to school. I really like the law. I believe there's a lot going on here. It's going to be a big future for sport law in the Dominican Republic. It's going to be forced to a new legislation when it comes to protecting the civil rights of our underage players. I mean, we have a lot of guys that sign when they're still underage. It's not like in the United States that you go through the school system to get drafted. Here, they can actually pull you out, and is going to force our government to come up with a new legislation to protect all the civil rights that are violated, not only from the trainers, from their own parents sometimes, that are the ones that pull them out of the schools and put them in the hands of some of these independent trainers to get it prepared and to go search for the dream.
That's awesome. That is, congratulations, first of all, for graduating. And that's awesome because those are stories too that we don't hear about. We don't know too much about it. We just kind of see that these teams are signing, these 14, 15-year-olds, and we're happy about it when they come through to the major leagues later down the line. But it's awesome that they have someone like you, to kind of be there for them for the sides that they may not understand and things like that. So that's that kind of work that you're doing is definitely game changing, and it's awesome to hear that.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So this baseball season was a little different. We had the 60 game season. We didn't even know if we would have baseball, first of all, and we ended up having a 60 game season. So as a former player and as a pitcher, what are your thoughts on that 60 game season? Like, what kind of adjustments as a player do you have to make going into a season, and just having it start and stop, kind of like it was with the spring training? You get flowing, you get the blood boiling, and then all of a sudden you have to stop and then restart and then jump into this quick 60 game season. What's the mentality of a player having to go through something like that?
Well, I believe it was very confusing for a lot of guys. I mean, MLB has been changing to the roots. I mean, they were brought out to their knees with this pandemic, like every other sport. I mean, they were trying to start, they couldn't. Then here comes like pulling their hair with the Players Association about how we're going to get the contract, how we're going to be able to pay the players what we owe them and get the show going. And they had a lot of competition and a lot of pressure because Japan was playing, Korea was playing.
Yeah.
So, the best baseball in the world was not even starting.
Yeah.
That put a lot of pressure on the MLB. But the fact that it was such a short season brings a lot of questions to the table. And even the changes that they made. I mean, the sudden death. That was one of the questions that a lot of us brought to the table. Okay, who's going to be responsible for that runner that you're going to put in second when we go into the 10th inning? Because I didn't leave it on base, and if you score, who's going to get the loss?
Yeah.
And it was a lot of, how that guy going to be, how that's going to look on this offensive part. How these guys got on. How are you going to put it on? It's not a field of choice. It's not even an error. How he got on base. And he's going to score the winning run without earning his way to the bag. And let's say, in the case of a reliever, he comes in with the guy in second. Ground ball second. He's in third. Fly ball to center field. The guy scoring a sacrifice fly. We lost. I didn't give up a hit.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny. Because they're trying to speed up the game somehow, which I believe is taking the beauty out of baseball. That's one of the biggest things the baseball had that everybody knew. The clock didn't matter in baseball. They trying to make it matter. And actually, if you look at it, every fan that actually said that the games are taking too long, they're not really baseball fans. There are people that are trying to understand the game. Because the real baseball fan knows it's going to last at least 3 hours.
Yep.
And if we last here longer than 3 hours, it's because it's a really good game. They're hitting a lot of rockets. And that's one thing that a lot of fans that are getting, to understand baseball didn't keep at the back of their minds, because actually the really short games are the games that a lot of fans don't like, because that's the one that nothing win.
Yeah.
This guy came up and strike out 15 and we won 1-0. It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
But the games that actually last long, and especially with the kind of demands that they have now in the game, that they want guys to be, faster, stronger, and younger, it's going to be a lot of home runs. And a lot of home runs is going to bring a lot of more times into the game, because it's going to be a lot of reliever change. Now, if you look at it, the way they trying to make changes, it's taking the nature of the whole baseball game out of what we know as players and as all fans of the game, because we don't have lefty specialists no more. Now you're going to have to go all in for 3 hitters at least.
Yeah.
We have guys that make a great living out of baseball for many years, like Jesse Orozco,
Oh yeah.
24 sacks, guys that were brought in for one hitter every night. I mean, everybody knew it was everyday Jesse. He was there every night for one
Yeah.
hitter. And those guys now they're gonna they're gonna lose their job because a lot of managers we think about it twice to bring them into the game. Okay, I can bring you in, to pitch against Freddie Freeman, but then after Freddie, he comes two righties. I can't leave you there for two righties because I might lose the game. So that's going to force into my decision if I really going to bring you in to pitch against that lefty because I have to leave you in the mound for at least 3 years. So it is changing. The game is changing.
Yeah, and as a fan and someone who, I've watched baseball for over 20 years now, I definitely agree with you. I think a lot of what the changes that are being implemented, especially this year, to speed up the game, as they're saying, it is taking a lot of the natural beauty of the game away. And I think you're right. Baseball is best without a clock. This whole speeding up the game stuff, you know, I didn't agree with a lot of the rule changes. I didn't like the whole runner on second base thing. I wasn't a fan of that one either. And, it's just, you kind of have to let baseball be natural and be itself because it's the game that shouldn't have to change and all that stuff. And I don't know.
Okay, let me give you a good example. Let's say that in football, they go to an extra time. But the extra times are not getting any score. What's the next rule? Oh, we're going to give you an extra time. You're going to be at the 10-yard line.
Yeah.
So you score right there. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't know. They're supposed to be the experts now, and they bring in new rules, and they even changed the strike zone more than twice in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people believe has been what made the game so long. If you ask some of the experts, they asked Bobby Cox right before I retired about the timing of the game, and he said it, to the media. He said, if you want the game to be faster, you better open the strike zone because guys, they want the ball now into a tee. Yeah. And it's hard for me to tell my pitchers where to throw the ball when you want the ball to be right down the middle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see where they're going to take the game because it's becoming harder to pitch every year. If you notice with all the rules they're making, it's becoming harder. And then pitching is going to cost a lot of money because the guys, nobody wants to pitch anymore.
Yeah.
If you notice that a lot of the money is going to the hitters. And besides that, they're making the strike zone smaller. Now, they have the sudden death and a lot of guys would not like to pitch anymore.
Yeah. And I imagine, you as a former pitcher, it must be tough to see that kind of stuff going on because those are your guys, the pitching staff, those are your people. And seeing them put, like with the run on second, I go back to that. You're walking into a game basically ready to lose almost because, like you said, you don't have to give up any hits and you lose the game with a guy on second starting an inning. And
yeah, imagine it's a guy on second with nobody out.
Yeah.
If you play basic baseball, you don't need to get a hit to win.
Yeah.
You just blow out a second or you bunt and then get a sacrifice fly. Game's over. I mean, they put the relievers into a really tough situation because, okay, let's say the guy that was in second was his runner. Somebody else going to get the loss. But what's going to say the next day? He gave up the winning run.
Yeah.
He didn't lose the game, but he gave up the winning run. And in a case that a guy does that 4 or 5 times a year, they're going to say, well, we lost 5 games because of you. Said, yeah, but I didn't give up any hits.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's going to be a lot to think about because a lot of guys' careers are going to be hurting. Yeah. Because somebody going to have to get the loss. It's not a team loss. Somebody's going to get the loss, but who? Because if I the starter, I pitched 9 innings. I left the game 0-0 on the 9th. And then he comes, this guy, and the 10th. There's nobody on. I mean, with
the run on second.
Starting an inning, without giving up a base hit or a walk or anything. And he's going to start with the man on second. Who's going to be responsible for that loss? Can't be me. I pitched my 9 innings and I left the game with nobody on. And now he said, well, I didn't put him on. Why do I have to get the loss?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna hurt a lot of guys' numbers.
Yeah, and that's tough. So speaking of rule changes, the DH, the universal DH, what are your thoughts on that?
I believe that's another part that's taking the beauty out of baseball because that's what has the difference between American League and National League, and it makes the game to be played different between both leagues. If you notice in the National League, we bunt it more because we have more pitchers. We
Yeah.
have a lot of guys that didn't know how to hit. It becomes a situation when you have to move the runner. So it was more managing when it comes to the National League because we have a really weak hitter. So we had to play baseball. We had to bunt. We had to learn the bone defense. In the American League, actually, the guy that hit for the pitcher is supposed to be the best hitter of the team. That's why he's there. In the case of David Ortiz in Boston, the reason why he was there is because he was hitting for the pitcher. So he was the best hitter in the lineup. Now you don't have to play that much defense because the guy's going to hit like anybody else. But when it comes to guy that he can't hit that 90% of the time, it's going to bunt, then you're going to have to move your infielder, as a manager in the offensive part, I'm going to have a pinch hitter because how many times you see pinch hitters in the American League? You don't see it very often.
No.
But it happens in the National League all the time because here comes the seventh inning with man in second with no out to 1 out. I'm going to start throwing a good game and I have a chance to score. I'm going to pull him out because I have a setup man that I'm paying, what, $8, $9, $10 million a year. And then I have my closer, which is making $15, $17 million a year.
Yeah.
And those guys are paid to be getting the 3 outs every night. So I'm not afraid to pull my starter out when I have an opportunity to get a score. It's going to change the game. I'm telling you. I don't know how they're going to muster all that in, but they have to keep that in their mind that you can't take the beauty of this game. You can't take the whole nature of what baseball is for the fans that learn the romantic part of baseball. I mean, a lot of people now are seeing the commercial part of baseball, whereas a lot of us that grew up seeing the last 2 years of what romantic baseball was. And we still believe that is the greatest attraction of this game.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see because once we hit the World Series with the AL versus the NL, we see that there are a lot of adjustments that the American League teams have to make. Like you said, one example is David Ortiz. He's a DH with the Red Sox through the whole playoffs and all that stuff. And when the Red Sox were in the World Series, they had to make a decision. Do we sit our best hitter or do we force them to play first base when they're playing against the National League? So that's something that moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how that's going to work if they do decide to keep the DH. That's going to change a lot. Like you said, it's going to change the whole landscape of how teams approach these interleague games and even the World Series.
But what are you going to do with guys that can pitch at the same time are good hitters, like Bone Gardner?
Yeah.
Guys that are pretty good. I see Wainwright is another decent hitter. Guys that have great careers at pitchers and hitters like Mike Hampton. Those guys, then you're going to lose that ability. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do because they're taking a lot out of the game that we know. It's almost a brand new game.
Yeah. Do you think they're doing a lot of these changes as a way to try to get the younger generation in, like attract the young fans and the young kids growing up?
But what was wrong with the old way? I mean, the old way brought a lot of us to the game. There was a lot of beauty in the game. They always preach the guys of summer, here they come, baseball. And we have great legends, great stories that were brought to the TV that make a lot of us go to the ballpark and ask our parents to take us because we wanted to see this guy that everybody was talking about. I know that modernism is getting everywhere. Technology is changing the game. It's like now they want kind of like a robot to call the balls and strikes behind the plate. What happened to the human error? I mean, that was the beauty of it. I don't know, because you're way younger than me, but back in the 80s and in the beginning of the 90s, we used to love to buy those videotape with bloopers of baseball or bad calls, the worst calls in baseball history. I mean,
Yeah.
was part of the game. Human error is a part of the game, and we have to keep that under consideration when we're trying to make any changes because they made a lot of money selling those. But those videotapes back in the days, we all used to buy them.
Yeah.
See some of the worst and greatest call in history of baseball, and uh, they had changed so much because some tragedies had happened. Where like when that runner in Chicago got stabbed by one of the wooden bats running in third base doing a sacrifice fly. He was tagging in third, and then he wasn't even looking at the home plate. We turned around, he got the piece of the bat into his chest. Now they want to make harder bats. They want to find harder woods that won't break that easy. I go, okay, what happened to pitchers? I mean, if you're giving a harder bat, it's one time we were in spring training and Kirk Chilling got up, I believe it was John West. It was, it's kind of like we call it like the judge for the Supreme Court. I mean, he's been in baseball for 50 years. And he come out and he say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And Kurt, he got up and said, okay, let me tell you what I do. You give me those guys elbow pats, knee pats, and string it the strike zone. So what you're doing for me to intimidate this guy so he doesn't dive over the play, I can't aim at the elbow anymore because he has a shin guard. So I'm going to aim at the ear. You know what's going to happen with a split second of an error? I'm going to put him in the hospital. That's what you're doing because you're making things harder for pitchers.
Yeah.
Now you can't intimidate a guy because you have a lot of gears that even if he gets hit, he won't hurt.
Yeah.
So for us to intimidate a guy, then you got to aim even higher. And that's going to put a lot of people's lives in danger. A lot of the changes, if you notice, from 1965 to here, has been to favor the hitters. Since that year that Buck Gibson, had an unbelievable ERA, they wanted to favor the game for the hitters because in their studies, they find out that by hitting home runs, Babe Ruth brought the people back to the ballpark. And I said, okay, how about all the people that Nolan Ryan brought back to the ballpark? How about back in those days when Cleveland and Alexander brought a lot of people to the ballpark in Washington? Juan Spawn, guys like that.
Yeah.
Why have to be only hitting? I mean, a great fan of the game will go to watch a good game. He will hope for his team to win, or he's go there to watch a good game.
Yeah.
They don't believe it if you go to the ballpark and it's not 5 or 6 home runs hit by both teams. It wasn't a good game for the fan, and it's not.
Yeah, and that's funny you bring that up because I grew up a Yankees fan. I'm still a Yankees fan, but every time Pedro Martinez was pitching against the Yankees, I wanted to see this guy strike out 15 guys, and the game ended 1-0, but the Yankees winning 1-0. But I wanted to see Pedro Martinez put on a show, and so it's funny you bring that up because that's kind of what I grew up with. I grew up with wanting to see a great game, and the home runs are great. I'm not gonna lie, they're awesome. It's cool seeing guys like Aaron Judge or Ronald Acuna Jr. now hitting these almost 500-foot home runs, but nothing can almost fill the need of a baseball fan to see that 1-0 game with a pitcher, an old-fashioned pitcher's duel. So I'm definitely with you on that.
Well, like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see where they're gonna take the game to, because home runs, they happen every now and then, very often. But how many fans can say that I was at the ballpark when somebody or such and such threw a no-hitter or I saw a perfect game?
Yeah.
I mean, I played for 26 years of professional baseball. And between winter ball and Major League, I had to witness or pitch together more than, I would say, almost 2,000 games. I only saw one no-hitter. One was thrown by me in winter ball, and another one that was a perfect game from David Kahn. against the Expos that I was there. In 20 years, I saw two of them.
Wow.
So you can't take that away from the fans.
Yeah.
How many fans can say I saw history happen? I mean, very hardly you're going to say I got myself a ticket and went to see Albert Pujols get his 3,000 hits, so his 700 home runs. That might happen in another 50 years. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in any given Sunday, like they say, I was at the ballpark and I saw, let's say, who, for example, let's say the guy out of nowhere, Peralta to another hitter. The guy that nobody expected came up with an unbelievable game. Nunez from the Marlins threw a 20 strikeout game, tying a record that's only been done twice by Clemens and Wood. You can't take that away from the fans because that's history. No many of us can say we were there. We saw history happen.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's huge, and that's something that we hope, even as fans, and I know, you as a former player, we want to see more of that, of the beauty of the baseball game and all that stuff. But just shifting gears real quick, we have the MLB playoffs coming up. We got through the 60-game season, and now we're going into the playoffs. What are a couple teams you're looking out for? We have some young teams like the Padres and the White Sox that are in there. The Marlins surprised a lot of people, and they're in the playoffs now. What are a couple teams that you're kind of looking forward to seeing, and maybe some upsets in the playoffs and things like that? And who do you pick to see in the World Series this year?
Well, I like consistency. I mean, consistency will guarantee you that you're going to be there. Not only once, anybody can make a miracle happen one year, but being there almost every year, like the Braves did in the '90s, it will dictate, how good are your chances to make it to the promised land. Cleveland is always playing a good baseball. Yeah. Dodgers are playing a good baseball, and regardless of the fact of how Kershaw has been doing in the playoffs, he's going to have to take that monkey off his back one day.
Yeah.
And we could see the picture that we see in the regular season, in the playoffs. I mean, this guy, he's going to be a legend because his numbers in the regular season cannot be taken away because nobody is being of the Hall of Fame because he didn't pitch good in the playoffs.
Yeah.
This guy is unbelievable. And a lot of people have to understand, yes, the Dodgers didn't make it to the World Series, but who got them to the playoffs? It was Kershaw.
Yep.
I mean, the guy, he's consistent. And, David Roberts has a few years now under his belt as a manager. He has some top season experience. So it's going to be interesting. They had some issues with their bullpen and the closer, but they're a good team. They play good baseball. Another team that is surprising, didn't go as far as I wanted to go with Milwaukee. They had, my friend Greg Cancel there, who's been playing good baseball, but they had a lot of young players. They still have some veterans there, but they have, I think, 85% of their team is a lot of young players. In the case of the Marlins, they had Mattingly. He's a great manager. And he has to be considered for manager of the year because what he did with the Marlins is impressive.
Super impressive. Yeah.
They have a bunch of ships, guided by a lion in this case. I don't know if they have the offense that is needed. I mean, San Diego has good offense, but with a pitching hold up. Yeah. That's a problem with teams like that. But when you got pitching, it's easier for you to make it. One of the problems with I will say, that was the problem with the Mets. They have good hitting, but the bullpen, and then when you bullpen, especially your middle bullpen, get it, to the last 2 innings, he's having problems. Then it's forced the manager to leave the starter in the game longer because he doesn't have any faith on his middle relief, which is going to hurt you in the long run because when it comes the time that the season is closing in, these guys have too many innings on their own and they start showing fatigue.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of issues, but I believe I tell you, Cleveland, like I said, they've been playing good baseball for the last few years. You notice, I think the last 5 years or so, they've been very consistent. They have really good offense. They have good players, and they have good manager, and that is very, very, I would say, influencing in your decision when you're going to pick a team. It's consistency, because consistency is not it's not a lucky shot. It's not like a lucky year, because they're good. They do it every year. They just have to continue doing what they're doing. So it's going to be interesting if we can see the first, in the last, I don't know, last time they face each other. It would be interesting to see the first time that Dodgers play Cleveland in the World Series. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as a Yankee fan, I was worried when I saw that they matched up with Cleveland, especially in a short series, because Cleveland,
Mm.
they're going into these playoffs hot, and I don't know if they'll slow down. Even as powerful as the Yankees' offense is, in the playoffs, like you said, it's about pitching, and
If
Cleveland,
you if you look at the Yankees, they always got great offense.
yeah,
Nobody had ever doubted that, because the Yankees are known since they used to have Steinbrenner there. They will, reach deep in the pocket to get the biggest bat out there if they need it. I mean, they want to get Cole this year, which hasn't pitched as they expected. I mean, he has an okay season, but not what they expected for the guy that is making that much money.
yeah,
But they had a lot of problems with the closer. You know, what's the name of this? God, the Cuban guy, uh,
Chapman,
Chapman.
yeah,
Had a lot of problems this year on saving the game. But pitching is still the most important part of the game. You can score 20 runs, but if you're going to give up 23, you're going to lose.
yeah,
And that's something that people have to understand when they build a winning team. They want to spend all the time, all the money in offense, but who's going to keep the other team from scoring? You know, uh, a lot of questions have to be brought to the table when it comes to what is playing a good game, what is having a good strategy. And if you look at it, Oakland A's had for the last 20 some years since they got Billy Bean as a GM, the Moneyball. Well, the Moneyball had never got us to the playoffs. You can't walk all the time.
yeah,
When you get really good pitching, that method won't work, because we're going to throw the ball right down the middle. If you're going to swing, I'm going to throw it right down the middle. I'm going to force you to swing and then follow, so you can follow me off the strike zone when I want to.
yeah,
And my 2 cents of that is he hasn't taken us to the playoffs. Moneyball hasn't taken us to the playoffs. So how many more 30 years do you need to take us to the playoffs? I mean, you need to switch system, because it doesn't work. No, in the big leagues. I believe it's a good teaching strategy. Let the pitcher challenge you, show you that he can throw the ball over the plate when he wants to. But if he doesn't have that ability, force him to throw you the pitch that you want, that is, right down the heart. But for winning baseball, no. Because if we be that good of a system, Oakland A's should be in the playoff every year.
yeah, and yeah, it's true because they you would think that they would have won a World Series by now with the kind of strategy that they've had and all that stuff, and the results just aren't there. And the team that that I can bring up that kind of talks about what you're talking about with the lack of pitching, great offense. Team that comes to mind for me is the Angels with Mike Trout. They signed Rendon this year with the big deal at third base. They had Pujols with the big deal, and but they can't get the pitching together, and it's a little disappointing to not see, a star like Mike Trout do his thing in the playoffs. He's only been there, I think, 1 year, and that was towards the beginning of his career now. And it's what you're saying. Pitching has to be at the forefront if you want to make championship runs year after year. So I'm definitely with you on that.
Well, look at the fact the Dodgers had the best ERA in the National League this year. You wonder where they're going?
Yep.
Because when you have good pitching, you can have an okay offense and you have a lot of chance to win. But if you have a great offense but you don't have good pitching, you're hardly going to win. I mean, the Yankees have had teams that people couldn't believe Money could put together. From the 2005, I would say, in 2006, they used to have Gary Sheffield, Hideki Matsui, Posada. What else they have? They had Giambi, A-Rod. I mean, they had unbelievable guys in the lineup that we never thought they could see Money put together in the big leagues because how the rules are. But they did. But they never got to the playoffs. Why? Because pitching. You need pitching.
Yeah.
Because offense, there's a lot of, I would say, it will depend to a lot of factors, but one of the biggest one is pitching. I know that we said in baseball, but at the end of the ninth inning, the one that goes around the plate or around the bases more often across the plate is the guy who's going to win. But who's the one that stops that from happening? It's pitching.
Exactly.
If that's why guys that have studied the game, guys like Brett Maddox, guys like Buck Gibson, Tom Severs, guys that have written about baseball, that played for so many years, becoming great athletes. And after that, they put their thoughts on paper. For a lot of us that besides being players are fans of the game, we read it. I mean, we understand how they saw the game. You understand why these guys were so great, how they try to simplify the game and look at things, like a business. They said, okay, in the case of Maddox, he says, that's why we have baseball nowadays. That actually started at the beginning of the 2000s, what they call a quality start.
Mm.
What is a quality start? According to the big league, if you give up 3 runs or more or less with a big league team that plays baseball, you should give us a chance to win. Because if we're a big league team, we got to score at least 3 runs a game.
Yeah.
After 4, it becomes harder. But that's why it's called quality start. Because if we play baseball by the rules, taking advantage of the other guy's mistake, and if you give up 3 runs or less, we should give us a chance to win. And those are thoughts that were brought to the table, were brought to life by guys that had studied the game. Not only they play, they study it and they share the thoughts. Guys that we used to sit by them in the dugout and pick their brain because they were the legend. I mean, they were making numbers that people were surprised. Guys like Brett Maddox that he said, I'm going to change velocity for movement. And after that, I used to work for ESPN, and when I had the opportunity to interview him while I played in San Diego his last year, he says, you know what, Miggy, I became a strikeout pitcher when I started moving the ball more than when I used to throw hard. Why? Because I was able to pull the ball when I knew he couldn't reach them. Before I was trying to throw by them. So now I have such a great command that I can pull the ball where even they know it's coming, they can still hit it because they can't reach it.
Yeah.
But I was able to be consistent on hitting my spot and change speed every time I needed to. But being able to pull the ball what you wanted, that's pitching. You can change speed, but if you change it at one location, you might get creamed.
Yep.
But being able to change speed and pull the ball where you want it, it's what is going to make you an excellent pitcher.
Yeah, and that's definitely important. Greg Maddux was like a mad scientist. Like he was like a surgeon too when it came to pitching, because you could see that, like you said, where he wanted the ball, that's where he put it, and he painted the corners better than I've seen any pitcher do, I think, in a long time. It's crazy the kind of things that he did on the mound. And like you said, he wasn't overpowering guys later in his career. He was pitching. He was being smart. And that's amazing.
If you look at his numbers, I mean, it makes you puke. It's so good that it makes you puke. You look at the guy that had 80 straight innings without a walk.
It's insane.
And he broke the record, with the intentional walk, because his manager, Bobby Cox, asked him to intentional walk a guy because they needed that game to make it to the playoffs. So, that stopped the record. But you're talking about a whole season of a reliever without giving up a walk. And a guy that I think I read the other day, in his career, he had 324 guys that got to three ball count, 3-0. And out of 324, I think like 300 of them were intentional walk. It's incredible. You're talking about that, about a guy that emphasized of the importance of command.
Yeah.
There you have it. And a lot of people don't look as Greg as a strikeout pitcher, but he had more strikeouts than Pedro Martinez. He had more strikeouts than Pedro Martinez and double the win of Pedro Martinez. Pedro had I would say, the misfortune to play with team at the beginning of his career that didn't score that many runs. I mean, the Expos back in the late 90s, we weren't that good. I mean, Vladdy didn't hit a homer. There wasn't much happening, you know. And when he got to Boston, then he started winning more games. But, you know, they say that Greg played in Atlanta. Not everybody in Atlanta back in the 90s won 300 games.
Yeah.
He did. You know, they had Evans, had Smalls. But if you look at it, it would be because of the team. All the starting pitchers would have 20-some wins. I mean, he's the only guy that won 4 straight Cy Young until I think Roger Clemens broke that record. But he emphasized in pitching. He emphasized in being able to put the ball where he wanted. And one of the things he always talked about was making the hitter hit the ball. Because a lot of guys nowadays are afraid of contact, and that makes the game even longer because he's ball one, ball two.
Yeah.
You know, if you're afraid of, you know, being hit, the game's going to last long.
Yeah.
Because you have to be aggressive over the plate so the hitter knows they have to swing. And by they knowing you're throwing the ball over the plate, it's when they actually follow you off the strike zone. And that was one of the things that Greg emphasized to a lot of us when we were younger. And it helped me a lot in my career.
Yeah, definitely. And that's awesome. You know, that's you stuff like that is great because you have these veteran guys that teach these younger pitchers. And like you said, it benefited you. And, you know, you're a world champion. And part of that is because of the lessons that you've learned and the great pitching. And you actually did really good in the World Series, which you actually beat my Yankees. So
that was an interesting series. I mean, the whole world was hurting, but New York had, you know, the biggest burden of all. And being able to play against them, it was so sentimental to play because Arizona was trying for the first title ever in any professional sport. New York was trying to bring something to the state to feel proud about and try to, you know, to ease their pain. And the way we played, I mean, I don't think there will be another World Series like that. They talk about the World Series that Boston had with the Big Red Machine back in the 60s and the beginning of the 70s. I'm not sure. But I don't think nobody had ever seen 3 games like the one we play in New York. You know, we shut them out in Arizona, and then we go to New York, and we are left in the field twice in the last 2 games by the last swing. And then we go to play home. And a guy that has 59 home runs is remembered in the history of Arizona for the weakest hit he ever hit. It's incredible. He has 59 home runs, Luis Gonzalez. You know, everybody talks about Sammy and McGuire and Griffey that year going for breaking the record. But Gonzalez was there too. Yeah, he had 59 home runs.
People forget about him.
Yeah, he was too shy. But then he goes to the World Series and hit the ball off his wedding ring, and we win the World Series. And everybody remember this guy for that soft, fly ball that hit the cut of the grass in the shortstop. But nobody had dig a little deeper to find out that guy got us to the World Series with 59 home runs.
Yeah, and that probably it's up there. It's as far as World Series that I've seen as probably the best. And, you know, obviously I would have wanted the Yankees to win. But as a baseball fan, I remember watching every game that series, and every game was intense, especially the games in New York, like you said. And maybe it was because of all that going on that year, but that's probably one of the best World Series I think I've ever witnessed. And it was like magic every game.
I mean, there were games there when we saw Clemens go against Chilling, and Randy, I think, won against Pettit, and Duque pitched a great game
Yeah.
in New York. Brian Anderson didn't pitch bad, but he ended up with the loss. And then here I go against Mike Mussina. I pitched a great game, and we ended up with the loss.
Yeah.
You know, we were one strike away. I mean, Byung Hong had 2 outs, 2 strikes. He comes a swing. The game's tied. We were like, okay, this is odd. And those 3 games lived the spirit of New York. And I believe was probably the most exciting 7 games I ever heard of. I mean, we had more people in Arizona outside of the stadium watching in a jumbotron that they did inside the ballpark.
Wow.
I mean, we had, I think it was like 15,000 or so inside. And they had to put a jumbotron outside. We used to have the train track. We didn't have that many buildings there back in those times. And they had to project the ballpark outside. I mean, the game outside the ballpark because people couldn't get in. I mean, we had warned by the fire department officers that you can't get more people that this building can take because it might collapse. And you know, the whole pressure too of September 11th.
Yeah.
And having, I think we have that picture is a picture on the internet. I think you can find it in a lot of the websites that is going to be a classic for years to come. As when President Bush went to the Yankee Stadium to throw first pitch, and he's in the cage talking to Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know. It was funny. When me and Danny Bautista, we were the one hitting them in the cages because the Yankees were hitting. So me and Danny went to. He wanted to hit. So because he was our 5th outfielder, so in case he had to get in the game, he wanted to get some more extra swing. So I was pitching the next day, so I went there to pitching some soft toss.
Yeah.
And he comes a Secret Service and tells us that we need to get out of the cage because the president wants to warm up. Then he looked at me going, is he serious? And I go, I guess so. He goes, and I went to the guy and said, can you repeat that again? He goes, yeah, we need the cage. The president wants to warm up. We're like, you have to be freaking kidding me. We're getting kicked out of the batting cage because the president wants to warm up. Oh, at least you get disappointed. You went there and threw a purple strike.
I did, yeah. Right down the middle.
Yeah. And it was, like I said, a really good series, a very emotional series. I believe the timing probably will never repeat itself. I mean, the whole September 11th thing, how sensitive the whole country and the world was, how many unbelievable players we have. We have 2 guys in those 2 teams that are going to make the Hall of Fame. I mean, Randy is in the Hall of Fame. Kurt is going to make the Hall of Fame one day. We have that was the year that Polony retired. Clemens going to be in the Hall of Fame. Sooner or later, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And Jeter, come on. We had guys there that were skull brochures. Come on. We had unbelievable guys. Andy Pettit. We had some guys there that were icons of baseball in that time. And see, for me, one of the most emotional times in that series was when the fans say goodbye to Polony on the right field. You know, the last inning, he went there, started clapping and saying his name. And, you know, he looked like he got emotional. You know, he took his hat off and tried to keep his head down. I believe that's the greatest compliment that any player can have when his fans appreciate him, you know, and give him a warm goodbye. A guy that played for so long, and he was a good player in New York, one of the hardest cities to play for.
Yeah.
Good player in New York.
Yeah, definitely. You know, guys like Paul O'Neill, I feel like those are guys that they're not gonna, take the headlines and as they say, but those are the kind of players that you need in championship teams. And the Yankees needed a guy like Paul O'Neill, not just because he was a really good hitter. People forget how good of a hitter he was, but he was clutch also, and the fire he brought, I think, every single
Mhm.
day. He showed emotion on the field, and that's not something that we see a lot today. And he brought
Uh,
that to New York. So it
yeah,
was awesome.
you got you got Bernie Williams too,
Oh yeah,
who was a good center fielder for many years, and Mike Mussina, which is another Hall of Famer. We have some guys that have respectable names.
yeah,
You know, we got guys that had good careers that dominated an era. I would say Mike Williams, who had really good years,
yeah.
as a San Francisco Giant, and Steve Finley, who was an outstanding center fielder.
Oh yeah, great
Um,
defensively.
Mark Graves, the Golden Boy from
Oh yeah,
Chicago, was our first baseman. So we have some guys that play really good baseball for a long time, had very respectable names, and they gave the people a show that they will remember for the rest of their lives.
yeah. So now that we're on the subject of the World Series, who do you think has a chance this year to win it all?
Well, it's going to be hard because they're going to have to play baseball. A lot of teams have issues when it comes to pitching or offense. Like, for example, San Diego is known for his offense, but then, Tatis is in a little bit of struggle, which is a heart of the lineup. But a lot of people are talking about the power of Tatis, but his speed of the bases. He's a very aggressive player. It's not
Yeah,
only his home runs, he's a very aggressive player. But will the pitching hold up? And then you look at other teams in the case, I would say, like the Dodgers, where we were talking. Can Clayton Kershaw get that monkey off his back? Because if he goes out there and give them the outing that they expected from him, it's a whole totally different scenario. It's a totally different team
yeah,
because he's going to pitch with a 3 day rest. It will be interesting to see too what's going to happen with some of the Cardinals. They have good pitching.
yeah,
They don't have probably Tatis. They don't have Machado, but they have good pitching, and that's like we've been talking the whole time, is the heart of the game. So it's going to be interesting. But regardless of the fact of what you have to play baseball. This is a really short season, and if you blink your eyes, you might be out. Or it's going to be too late for you to try, to step up your game. So it's going to be interesting. I still believe the Dodgers have a really good chance. It will be good for the city of LA. They wanted a championship, but they get beat by the Astros back in those days, and then the scandal came up,
yeah,
and everybody wondered what if. But it's gonna be good for the city of LA. Let's see.
yeah. And it's funny because the Lakers might win a championship this year. So imagine that World Series championship and then the NBA championship in the same year for the city of LA. That'll be
That would be too much.
yeah,
That would be too much. It would be like when the Celtics and the Boston were going to the
yeah.
World Series. That I don't know. That would turn the whole city crazy,
Oh yeah,
especially the city of LA.
yeah. Party Central. If they get those two, and they'll get them around the same time, maybe. So we'll see how that's gonna look.
No, no. I tell you, it's sport. It was shaking this year by the pandemic. A lot of sports have taken a big hit.
Yeah,
We're still trying to figure out how we're going to play winter ball this year, especially when hasn't been no minor league. So
I
there's
know.
going to be a lot of players trying to play.
Yep.
A lot of guys that want to go back to the game form, and a lot of guys that would like to get a chance to get a job. And we have we heard the other day that 50% of the sponsors are not coming back.
Wow.
This is not like America that you can have no fans on the stands and still, have a good contract with
Yeah.
the TV like the Dodgers have, for $2 billion for 20 years.
Yeah.
You're going to see those kind of teams here. And they're talking about playing with no fans, which is going to be really hard for the Dominican people. We are very into our game and very emotional. We like to be part of the game.
Yeah.
And then no having support from, the sponsors, that's going to really hurt the Dominican winter ball. So, like I said, the sport has been, tested this year. Uh, we have to see where it's going to take us because a lot of teams, I don't know how they're going to take the fact that a lot of guys didn't play in the minor league, and they might want to. They can't, they can't call the player and say you're on the fatigue rule because you can play,
Yeah.
but the kid want to play because he needs money.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say, well, some of these guys signed for $1 million. Well, only the first few round pick counts for millions of dollars. There's a lot of these kids who sign for 35, 40 or something like that, and they have to give some to their, the trainers. So those guys are the household of the family. They need to earn money. That's why a lot of them play winter ball. And it will be interesting to see what the teams are going to do from prohibiting these guys from playing because they need the money. I mean, they're going to almost, I would say, 9 months without getting a paycheck.
Wow.
Long time.
Yeah, that's definitely tough and definitely something to look at moving forward too, because like you said, a lot of these guys are losing, the game experience and things like that. Because I can imagine, I never played professionally, but I can just imagine not getting those reps in the minor leagues and things like that against professional hitters. It's very different than working out at home. And I don't think you're ever in game shape if you're only working out at home. I think you need the reps against, professional hitters and things like that.
The whole world was stopped. There's a lot of here you couldn't even go practice the ballpark. I mean, the police would arrest you. They had the ballpark closed, and you need to see live pitching.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had such a bad year in baseball here that they stopped the July 2nd draft. Some guys didn't. I mean, the guys that were supposed to be drafted this year didn't get the opportunity to become professionals. So those guys are supposedly going to be pushed forward to the 2021, which is going to bring the controversy because a lot of us understand that in this country, a year older can bring your value down as a player up to 90 or 80%.
Yep.
So it's going to be tough for a lot of people because the whole world is not completely, on his wheel. Things are not going. They're not getting on track yet. We're still trying to figure out how to do things, and it's for the first time ever in the history of this country, we're going to play under this condition. I mean, back in 2001, we had the 9/11, so we had an experience of playing under a state of emergency.
Yeah.
But no Dominican baseball. We never had. We never had, and I don't think nobody that I know has ever seen nothing even similar. But it's gonna be interesting to see what they can do to keep the game alive, to keep the fans in the game, because like it happened to us in Montreal back in 1994 when we had the strike, when the people didn't see baseball, they went to hockey. And that really hurt baseball in Montreal because the hottest ticket in Montreal was the Blue Jay, which came from winning back-to-back World Series.
Yeah.
Now, they were forcing baseball to have, for the first time in the history of the MLB, the first World Series outside of the United States, because the Expos was number one in Montreal and the Blue Jays were the number one in the American League. So they had a chance to have a World Series only in Canada. Yeah. And here comes a strike and we didn't play. So it was funny because we were saying the first time that Canada was forcing to make history into the MLB, we had a strike. We didn't play. And now for the first time, we're going to have probably the first real Canadian to go into the Hall of Fame, and then we had the pandemic because we had Larry Walker was going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So we were cracking them on that the other day. So we have to be careful when it comes to Canada.
I know.
But it's some of the stuff that happened in baseball. Some of the stuff that happened in baseball that are interesting, that are, things that you used to joke around. But everybody that played with Larry Walker or play against Larry Walker knows how incredible athlete he was. He was a guy that was natural in a lot of things. Unbelievable arm, great power. He was a good hitter. And he was a good competitor. I mean, you talk about a guy that he would play to win. He was one of them. And it was interesting for us to see, man, he had the chance to go to the Hall of Fame. Look what happened. Now they have to stop, his introduction. Then he's going to have to push to next year.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see what he's going to say when he gets into the podium.
I know. And it's funny, too, because not only did his get canceled, but he was supposed to go in with Derek Jeter, who got the unanimous votes of the whole stuff. So he was kind of forgotten and everything.
Yeah.
Even though he had, like you say, he was a great player, man. I don't know how many people actually got the chance to see him play, but he was a very, very great player, man.
And it would be good to see, too, who's going to be chosen this year to go to the Hall of Fame, because they can't just go with the past 2020. They have to pick up a 2021.
Yeah.
So they have to induct all of them at once. And a lot of us are hoping to see the name of Sammy Sosa getting there. Sammy had unbelievable years. They're going to have one day let Barry in.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of suspicions, but nobody had never proved anything to Barry or Sammy. So, I mean, Sammy had a problem with court bad, but nobody could prove that they have steroids. And by the time go by, hopefully things will ease up a little. Yeah. And you're going to see guys like Manny Ramirez getting in there. Barry, like I said, Clemens, Sammy, guys that we believe should be in there.
A guy like Barry Bonds, man, you really look at the numbers. The guy was, a lot of people remember him for his San Francisco Giants days, but the things he did with Pittsburgh too.
Oh no,
he could make the Hall of Fame just on the Pittsburgh numbers. Never mind what he did for his whole career. An absolute athlete, man.
And the guy that I think he had 7 Gold Gloves and 7 MVPs. I mean, the closest now I think is Trout that had like 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah.
Where he had 7, and he's number 1 of all time in home run. He's number 1 of all time in walks in the season and lifetime.
Yeah.
He is one of the 300 club. Yep. He's the only 400. He's the only 500.
Yep.
So, I mean, he deserves a name in history.
Yeah.
So you can't take that away from him. There's some other guys that we would love to see there. Guys that had really good careers too, that are still hanging around the ballot, and hopefully they can get the appreciation of some of the writers of America that vote them in, because we play against some of them and we know how good they were. Guys that, like I said, Andy Pettit was great, unbelievable. It was hard to see guys like Johan Santana that didn't last long. He didn't have 300 wins, but there was a guy that for 10 years dominated the big league.
Yep.
And it was a guy with really unbelievable numbers. And he got taken out of ballot, I think, the first year. Guys that will be taken under consideration, like Bobby Abreu. Guys that had really good careers in Latin America that can bring some pride to some of our countries. Like Venezuela hasn't had another Hall of Famer since Encarnacion, I think it was. With him, the shortstop for the uh, Big Red Machine. What's his name? God, I can't remember his name right now. I got his face, but I can't remember his name. He's the only Venezuelan in the Hall of Fame. Uh, Concepcion,
Oh,
that's the one.
yeah,
Concepcion. And it's going to be interesting to see when another Puerto Rican is going to go into the Hall of Fame.
yeah,
You know, so we'll see. Hopefully, one day we can have a Colombian player go into the Hall of Fame. They
yeah,
have good players. I mean, Renteria, Orlando Cabrera. They have a few guys. So in Mexico, we're waiting
yeah,
to see that. I mean, guys like Valenzuela had unbelievable career, didn't make it to the Hall of Fame. So, we're waiting. We're waiting to be able to have some pride, walking to the Hall of Fame. I know Dominican guys, there are a few, in the list. David retired, Manny had retired, Sam is still there. We have Pujols is going there,
yeah,
Adrian Beltre.
yeah,
We have a few. We have a few that are going to be in the league for a while. But it will be good to see guys from other countries to bring the love of baseball in those countries and in those islands to get that I would say that favoritism of the fans
yeah,
for the love of baseball, because we see them in the Caribbean World Series. Now we got Panama. We haven't had a Panamanian since what? Rob Carew into the Hall of Fame. Oh no, Mariano,
Mariano,
which is
yeah,
yeah. And they have other players, that came out of there.
yeah,
But we need to see when Cuban is going to make it to the Hall of Fame. A Cuban that could be raised and born in his own country, because they have some Cuban natives that were raised in the United States that
yeah,
had really good chance. Rafael Palmeira, the guy with 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. So you don't see that very often,
yeah,
and still is not into the Hall of Fame. And that would be another thing that would give Cuba, some pride. We're all waiting for that. It's going to be good for the game.
yeah, absolutely. It's always about growing the game, and that's a great way to grow it, honestly. And hopefully we'll see that one day. But listen, man, I appreciate you being on here. This was great. I love being able to talk baseball, man. That's why I'm doing this. My wife told me you need to find something to do because I don't understand everything you're talking about when you talk baseball. So this is why I
Oh,
started
no,
all this.
no. Tell her you need to learn baseball because it's much more sexy than a girl that knows baseball. That is sexy.
That's right.
And well, it all depends, how they're brought up. But a girl that knows baseball, that is sexy.
That's
So
true.
that's what I try to tell my wife. She knows a little bit of baseball, so
Yeah.
that helped me.
Yeah. No, my wife is definitely getting better. Because she obviously follows everything I do with the Rob Duran sports and all that stuff. So she's definitely learning a lot of stuff. And sometimes I'll hear her say, "Oh, was that a sacrifice fly?" Something that she didn't know back then, and she knows now. So it's always great. But listen, it was great to have you on here. I really do appreciate you taking the time to join me, being my first guest. And you're welcome back anytime. You have an open invitation whenever you have time,
Perfect.
whenever you're free. I'm happy to have you.
All right. No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the fact that I was, the first person that you actually brought to your show. Make sure that you keep me posted with the new figures that you're going to bring in. Shoot us the link so we can follow you up.
Sounds good, man.
All
Hey,
right.
thank you, Miggy.
All right. Thank you.